everybody. As we tease, we don't have just one special guest for you this week. We have two very special guests for you this week. Everybody, welcome back, Jackson Lanzing, and welcome for the first time, Collin Kelly. Welcome, guys.
Hey. I was going to be like one special guest, one not so special guest, but I was...
Don't pit us against each other that early, man. We'll do that on our own, trust me.
You decide which is which, everybody.
Yeah. I also want to title this episode, We Got Some Fucking Deadlines. So I want to put that in the header. We have some fucking deadlines. So welcome, guys. Jackson's been here before. Collin has not. So we'll be gentle. And we know you have a bunch of swords behind you, so we won't take it too far. Okay, so let's hear the origin story from your side, Collin, because we got a lot of shit to talk about. So how did it start for you with the comics industry, and then this whole relationship of you guys writing with each other?
Yeah, for sure. I was, I was growing up, growing up in love with the library, like so many of us. And the best part of the library is always going to be the graphic novel section. So early 90s, you had the weirdest eclectic assortment of things. So you're just kind of grabbing whatever you could pick up off the shelves. And then one day my mom comes home and she says, we're going to buy some magazines from, I don't know, Girl Scouts or whatever. Mm-hmm. And within those magazine subscriptions were like 3 comic books you could pick up. So I lose my fucking head. And one of those books was Captain America. So I say, yes, please. I would like a folded up, stuffed into my mailbox.
Rolled up.
Yeah, just like brutally savage. Yeah. But that's kind of where I got started, just reading the weirdest kind of stuff from the library, and then also these wonderful Captain America comics, which in hindsight, it's the entire run of losing his powers and having to wear the Iron Man suit, and maybe not not the cream of the crop kind of stuff, but definitely enough to kind of get my juices flowing and really fall in love with the medium.
Yeah, for sure.
As for this guy, we met in college. We were both USC cinema students, going to USC on massive scholarships because we're both poor as dirt. And effectively, yep.
Thumbs up for that. Poor as dirt.
Yeah. It's about a scholarship for student loans that I finally paid off this year. Thank you very much.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Off one of mine, so hence
there you go.
why we have all these fucking deadlines.
Yeah.
We met in film school. I went away for an amazingly wet and cold summer abroad in Ireland, and came back to find that my best friend had found a new best friend, which was this gentleman Jackson Lanzing here. So of course I instantly hated him because that was my spot and my best friend. Shout out David Server, wherever you are. And pretty much spent the next year really despising this guy. Partially that was because we fit very similar verticals. We were both very clever, outspoken, storytellers effectively. And one of the reasons that I crashed so hard against Jackson was he's fucking good. Right? Like, it's easy to have peers when you're like, look, you're really talented, but we all know who's the best. I couldn't do that as easily with Jack. So we kind of started developing. We ended up in a writer's group together. And suddenly I'm reading his stuff. And it's kind of driving deeper into my skin that this is a guy who really specializes in small stories, black box stories. Is this sounding familiar? And what I didn't realize at the time is that he was looking at my stuff and saying, holy shit, I didn't know you could do this. The USC screenwriting program is really great, really well known for saying, don't worry about budget, write what you love, which is a good way to encourage you to get writing and a bad way to learn how to write scripts that actually can sell.
Right.
But, I'm writing $400 million action extravaganzas. Jackson's writing these tight little black box character dramas.
Because I wasn't in the screenwriting program. I was in the directing program, so I needed to write stuff that I could direct.
You knew about the budgets.
Exactly.
What's a budget? Never met him.
Yeah, right.
And slowly through that, we kind of started to develop a mutual respect, because how can you hate someone that talented?
Right.
We start going to comic book stores together every Wednesday. We pile into David's PT Cruiser and drive up
Yep.
to Golden Apple, eat the
Nice.
greasiest pizza on the planet, and pick up our books.
Yeah.
And then spend the next few hours arguing about our books and really kind of creating a shared storytelling language through that clash. Lovingly good-natured clash. After school, we picked up some tickets. Our parents kind of chipped in to be able to pay for gas and tickets for us to drive out to Lollapalooza in Chicago, which is still one of the greatest lineups ever. Rage Against the Machine, Radiohead, and Kanye West at the peak of his career.
He literally
Holy shit.
he had just put out Homecoming. He was coming back to Chicago for the first time.
Oh,
it was
man.
like Lollapalooza was right in the middle of Chicago that year. It was insane.
Yeah. And Rage playing on stage at a show they weren't protesting, like, that's awesome.
Yeah, I know, right?
that's amazing in itself. Wow, holy shit.
Yeah, I mean, they were so great about crowd control. Just like, we know you are angry, but you are not angry at your brothers and sisters.
Save the mosh pit for the revolution, brothers, says Zach. And I was like, you're my favorite, man. Like, I love that Zach De La Rocca had to like be like, don't rock so hard.
Yeah. You're rocking too hard. Save it for the band.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah.
And on the drive out, what else are you supposed to do driving through the boonies of the country? Love the boonies of the country, but it's not like there's a lot of, I don't know, podcasts at the time.
There weren't. There were no podcasts.
I was going to say no podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started breaking stories, and we started to think about, well, like what would be really cool is if they did a Wolverine movie, but like in Japan. Man, right?
Yeah,
really dates us.
Yeah. That'd be sick.
And we were jamming on that idea, and then we're like, you know what? Like, what if it's not a Wolverine movie? What if it's just kind of something we tell a story about? And that was kind of how we started cracking our very first script, called Sundown. Effectively, it's about a group of samurai who are banding together to protect a small community against feral Japanese vampires.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, hell yeah, right? That's kind of become...
sold.
As did it, which was amazing. We came up with the idea on the way out. We wrote it on the way back, stopping outside of Yellowstone and just jamming out on, like 80 pages in a day.
It was insane.
And passed the computer back and forth.
Awesome.
And we realized that was more productive and more fun than either of us had ever had working alone. And when you kind of have that kismet, you don't ignore it. So basically after that, our career in Hollywood started, and we were off to the races, and effectively have been creatively married ever since.
And then, comics came into our life through Rebecca Taylor at Archaea when we did Hacktivist, and we got hooked on it. And as comics were a huge part of our childhoods, our teenage years, our young adulthood, our origin story as friends, leaning into it just made a lot of sense, and it's been like the best decision we ever made.
Yeah, effectively, yeah.
So we talked to a lot of people. Obviously, most of our guests are like singular writers that do things alone. How is that back and forth? Like, you guys just yelling ideas at each other? Are you like doing the old like say one word and build a story, or like how does that kind of work in the back and forth?
Sure. I mean, so it can start in a lot of different ways. The truth is, a good portion of our process is exactly the same as the process that Collin just described about driving to Lolla, which is we put ourselves into a place like my house, his house, a balcony, a coffee shop, an office. We close the door and we talk. We just hang out like friends. Like, that's literally our process. We sit down, and once we're done bullshitting about what we did that day or what video game we're super into or what book we read, eventually one of us will pull up. We have a spreadsheet that tracks all of our process we've had for a decade that just tracks everything we're doing, because we do so much at a time in a bunch of different mediums. So we have to know what the next deadlines are. We pick that deadline, we know what it is, and we say, okay, great, given that this is the next thing to do, or, hey, maybe we're free to conceptualize on an idea. Hey, I've been thinking about X, and maybe that X is like a company has come to us and said, hey, we want you to come up with a pitch for Batman Beyond. Or maybe it's us sitting there and being like, hey, I thought maybe an interesting way in on a story, I can't get it out of my head, would be like a person who's going through this who runs up against this. And we just kind of put that on the table and see if it sparks for the other guy. And generally, because we've been working together for so long, something about it will spark. and we'll kind of start.
If Jack thinks there's something interesting in it, then probably I will also think there's something interesting.
And vice versa.
Might not be a
Yeah.
Right, and then we'll just talk about it. So it's sort of like the internal process for any writer. I tend to think, like, because we are all, we are also individuals who have individual brains as much as we present like a hive mind. That individual brain still exists, and like the individual creative pattern still exists. We still do our own individual creative work, just not really in writing. So when we work together, it's a lot like how the brain works, where the brain has a bunch of different opinions that argue amongst themselves, and most of it's happening in your subconscious until your opinion comes out the winner, and that's what gets verbalized out of your mouth or in your brain. Like once you sort of set on an opinion, but that's after your brain has done a bunch of internal deliberation. I just think we've externalized that process. So we have that conversation out loud, and then to sort of arrive at a joint opinion after that deliberation. And we have to make sure that it is a joint opinion so that we don't get to a position, and we don't, right? Really, I think it's one of the cool things about our partnership is this hasn't really happened in 10 years, where we will sell a thing on a pitch or something like that, and then we'll get into the actual mix and realize we have completely different opinions on what it is. We don't really do that. We have a pretty good understanding of like tone and character and plot and what our objective is for a comic, often what the artist is going to be, or what kind of artist we're looking at. We'll know all of that before we put an idea in front of someone, which often means that we're doing a lot more work on spec up front than other writers, because we can't just be like, nah, I don't know, it's this, and hope that they like it enough that we can develop it out. Like we actually do have to know internally enough of it to live. So that I guess is a little bit of a complication on the process, but otherwise I think it's just like any other writer. It just happens external rather than internal.
But it's also, you're correct. There's a lot of yelling. You're not going to get everything. It's not like you're not going to immediately gel on everything, and sometimes you got to scream and holler at the other guy eventually because they just don't fucking get it. It's your idea. How could they possibly be so fucking ignorant? And then you're like, what is this? And you're like, oh shit, that's what you meant?
Yeah.
That is
so what I just heard was you cracked the code on life and found a way to make a living hanging out with your best friend, making pretend all day.
This is exactly it. This is exactly it. That is exactly like, and when people wonder, why do we do it together, right? Why not just be individual writers? Because we could go be individual writers. Like, Collin is an excellent writer. He could do this without me. I am an excellent writer. I can do this without Collin, technically. The process is just not nearly as fun. It's not nearly, and I don't think it results in as good work. I think both of us have done individual work, and like we've had fun with that. But I think we both know that the other guy fills in a part of us that would otherwise be blind, and that might be an idiosyncrasy as a writer, right? That might be a thing that when people see it, they're like, "Oh, cool! That's how you know a Collin story, how you know a Jackson story." But when the two of us synergize, it just creates a different thing entirely. So it is simultaneously fun, and I think who knows what story is objectively better, but from our perspective, I think we end up with stories that feel more thought through, and even if they aren't like objectively, between the two of us, we can really know that we like thought it through and justified it and feel good. Like I feel like it helps us to never feel like we're like just winging it, because which is an easy thing to do, I think, especially in comics when you're moving very fast and you're doing a lot at once. It helps us stay focused, helps us make sure that there's like a quality control in every book, which doesn't mean that every book turns out great, but it does mean that we have I think maybe a higher batting average than we would as individuals. And then otherwise, yeah, man, it's just a chance to like hang out with my best friend and tell stories, which we would do anyway. Awesome. It's just this way we get to do it as a business, which is awesome, really fun.
Yeah,
getting paid for it is, not gonna lie, Pretty good.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Pretty good.
Pretty cool. Not a bad gig. Not a bad gig.
Pretty good.
Well, it also really helps. This is the other reason that we did it, is because we started in Hollywood, and in Hollywood, when you're like 23 and you're coming into these rooms with like big directors who are just throwing their dick around and trying to like do what they want at the cost of you, it is really, really valuable to have an ally in that room. And as an individual writer, you rarely do. So having a partner really means that we were always walking in with an ally, with somebody who we knew had our back. And so when we had huge heartbreaks in the early part of our career, and we had huge heartbreaks, we had dream jobs we lost, we had projects that we thought were going to go that never did. Like our 20s are a graveyard of hopes and dreams. But because there were two of us and we're able to hold that together, like
drink to that.
We were able to make it to our 30s where we were able to actually fulfill some of those hopes and dreams. You know what I mean? And I'm not sure that would have happened. I think as an individual writer, I might have crumbled. But when you're together with another guy, it's a different scenario. It's a band of brothers thing.
It's that kind of funny thing because it's like sometimes you're like, man, I can see really Jack's hurting. He needs me to be strong right now. And it's like you can pick each other, you can protect each other and pick each other up. But it's like, look, we're both fucking hurting, but like, I gotta be strong for my brother. Very rarely do both of us collapse.
Yeah. It's like a support system. Really quick, because you mentioned like sometimes you don't gel. We'll talk about the project soon because you got fucking deadlines. But you said something I was going to ask about, like you don't gel sometimes, and I would assume that. I mean, you're very similar, but you definitely feel more passionate about like maybe one person to be more into Batman Beyond or Aquaman or something like that. So is there times where you come to like an impasse or like you can't sort something out? How does that work for you guys? Or
I can only think of one time really where we could not gel and we had to bail on a concept. Ironically, then it turned into something else that just fucking rips. But I'm big into like beefcake and pinup and like general wild horniness. Like to me, that is just like you could have an entire story and it is just about being horny, and I think that's delightful.
Okay.
My writing is like extremely asexual. It takes a lot to get a sex scene into my work. I don't know why this is.
Complements each other.
Yeah, I don't know why this is, but it is genuinely, it's probably the biggest difference between us is that I don't really write sex into my stuff. Like romance, sure. I just don't tend to get there with my stuff. It's not really where my brain goes. And Collin, it's like a priority in his work. So we do actually hit an impasse on that sometimes. Yeah.
So Collin, you read a lot of manga then?
Oh, well, me, my man, it's all Dragon Riders of Pern.
Oh, hell yeah.
But I mean, that's the interesting thing, right? Like, that's one of the only times that we both come at each other and it's like, look, there's no bridging this gap. And this was specifically just on my mind. We did a short story for the most recent DC anthology series that was like a Valentine's Day issue. Hence why I was like, make it horny and they pitched us Sergeant Rock and Dinosaur Island. Love on Dinosaur Island.
That was all they had. They came at us, they were like, romance on Dinosaur Island with Sergeant Rock. We don't know what that means. We don't know what it is.
Good luck.
Romance on Dinosaur Island. Do you have a pitch?
Yeah. We kind of were both playing with these ideas, and I was definitely pushing for like kind of a Shauna the She-Devil, like he finds a sexy cave woman and they
like a Red Sonja kind of thing.
Exactly. And we go back and forth, and eventually Jack is just like, Nope, I don't want to write it. This isn't good. There's no sport here. You just want tits. And I'm like, I know, it's tits. And we went back to the drawing board and had to look like, okay, well, where's the character? Like, what are we going to settle on? And as always, what we settle on is character. We dove into the idea of what would it really matter. It's like if you were Sergeant Rock trapped on a dinosaur island, what would it mean? And we cracked onto this idea that it's not really about him, it's about the dinosaurs that are in love. And like showing this kind of romance between two velociraptors, and through their affection for each other, these two monsters, these two killers finding the humanity in each other, Sergeant Rock's heart cracks open because he's been so long without any kind of companionship, without someone he actually cares about. He sees this humanity in these dinosaurs and it rekindles something in him. So he gets to feel like maybe there will be something for him after the war. maybe he doesn't just need to be Sergeant Rock. Maybe he can just be Rock.
Wow.
Right? And you're like, oh, shit.
Salt.
Bro.
Yeah.
But that-
yeah.
Oh!
And then you're like, but dinosaur tits.
Right, but that is, I think, a really good example of the process working. Right, that's actually not the process not working. That's just the process taking a little bit longer. Like, I have a story. I'm sure I told this story on the last podcast, or the last show. So I'll make this really short. But like, the story I always tell about us not agreeing, I don't even remember what it was about. I genuinely don't. It was like we hit a thing where Collin had an opinion on a scene and I had an opinion on a scene. I think it was in Star Trek Year 5, but I genuinely can't recall. And we could not for the life of us square it out. Like, I just had a difference of opinion in terms of what this was about, and Collin had a difference of opinion about what this was about. And we had to get so deep into where our opinions were coming from and like why we had these opinions and what the objective we were trying to get to the audience was. And like we had to get, and this is again, I think the bug and the feature of the process is we have to become subconscious, like aware of our subconscious in a way that most writers don't, just because we have to communicate it to the other guy. And
that means like getting deep into trauma.
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah, we have to like talk about our shit. It's like therapy.
Yeah, like where's it coming from?
Yeah. And we got into it, and that involved like talking. You know, I'm getting animated about it. We got 10 times as animated as I am right now, sitting at this table, just going at each other about this. And then we finally hit a thing where it's like, oh, that's what you mean? It was like, yeah, man, that's what I mean. And we were like, cool. And we started writing. And then it got done, and Collin was like, cool. And by the time we're done writing, normally like in person together, because we write separately most weeks, and then we get together on Thursdays and Sundays. We have for a decade. And by the time we were done with that Sunday writing session, we tend to be pretty exhausted. And so Collin was like, it was like 6, and he was like, all right, I'm going home. I was like, all right, later, dude. He was like, all right, later. And he leaves. And the door closes, and my wife, who's been on the couch this whole time doing her own shit, turns around and goes, what the fuck was that? And I was like, when she was like, I thought you guys were going to kill each other. Like, I thought that's like the worst fight you guys have ever had. And then you just stopped. And we were like, yeah, because we solved the issue. And then we wrote. And she was like, wild. And I was like, yeah, I know. I don't know. Like,
it just works.
Like, I don't know why it works either. It just does. Like,
that's amazing.
Yeah, a lot of trust.
That is.
So
that is. Yeah.
So yeah, we should talk about some of the comics you have coming out. Let's
Probably,
start with the one that's ending. Let's start with Harbinger.
Great.
Yep.
Finishing up. What's going on with Harbinger since we last talked?
We're into the second run. The Harbinger is in its. I think the last time we spoke, it was on the upswing, heading from 1 to 4, which was kind of the Harbinger is kind of a V. It goes up to 4 and then down to 8, and that's the whole run. So we were getting to that midpoint last time, and that was all about getting Peter Stanchik, the lead of the Harbinger franchise, really getting his mind right. He's a character who's had a lot of trauma and made a lot of really bad decisions, and that's been a big part of his character. And he's left a lot of hurt people in his wake, including himself. And we thought it was time, and really the whole mandate of the book from the very beginning was to find a way to bring Peter some peace, to quote, I mean, for lack of a better term, to fix Peter Stanchik. But I don't think he was broken. I think he was just, I think you told about all the stories you could tell with that guy before he needed to look himself in the eye and start to improve. And the character had been promised for years to become this better man, to become a leader of men. We knew he was supposed to become, in a lot of ways, like a Superman figure for the Valiant universe, but getting him there wasn't as easy as like flipping a switch. You had to do the work, just like any self-improvement, right? So issues 1 through 4 is all about doing that, and then issues 5 through 8 is all about the fallout from that, about what happens when the whole world, now that you've held yourself accountable, the entire world decides to hold you accountable as well, and how you live in spite of that.
And one of the things that we did here is like, let's see, what issue just dropped?
6 just dropped.
So,
there are 2 more issues.
4. Well, the big revelation in issue 4 is that Peter's psyche has effectively been broken off, and the Peter we've been following is really only half of who he used to be. His negativity, all the things that he views as the toxicity that is himself, he schismed off into a separate person, a character we call the Renegade. And the Renegade is this very real embodiment of all that kind of toxic masculinity, but also just toxic personal choice that he has become. And these last 4 issues are really about approaching that and looking at it and not just saying like, oh, you're a bad guy, right? Because it's not a bad guy. It's still Peter Stanchek, right?
Still part of him.
It's part of him. You can't ignore who you are, even if, God, you would love to pretend that wasn't yourself. You can't do it. So what we really wanted to do with these last 4 issues is look that in the face and have Peter face the idea that he can't cut this part away from him. He needs to face it. And obviously it's a fucking superhero book with Robbie Rodriguez pumping out amazing goddamn art. He's going to face it in the most high octane, awesome way possible. Like obviously, what we wanted to do here is turn up the entire stakes, create out of our little Psyot community, this town, this part of Chicago called Psyot City, and then put it under threat. So with the Renegade's rise to power, he is activating Psyots, he is taking control of their powers, he is twisting them into the same kind of negative influences that he himself embodies, and then bringing that thunder and that pain and that trauma back to the citizens of New York.
Or
Chicago.
Yeah.
And very much so with that perspective of, look, if you can't love me for who I am, then fuck you, your house gets to burn.
Nice. It's a very it was a really therapeutic book to work on in 2020 and 2021 when I think we were all going through a lot of reckoning in terms of how we live within our society, but also how we live within our families, within our social groups. And both of us as white men dealing with our internal responsibilities and what we have within culture from like a privilege perspective, a lot of that got to be conversations that we didn't just get to have between each other, but conversations that got to spill onto the page and really get spoken about and interrogated within the fiction of Harbinger. So I'm super proud of that book because it is not just an exploration of this one character or a very like targeted look at this one psyche. I think it gets to be a larger artifact from a cultural conversation that kicked off while we were working on it. So I think I hope people can look back at this book several years from now and see like, it's one of those places where I think I'm glad it feels dated. Like I hope people look back at it and go, wow, that's really definitely a book that came out in 2022 because like it feels like a book that came out in 2021 and 2022. It feels like it hungs with the exact like conversation we were having at that time, but then really made some adjustments and changes in the Valiant universe moving forward. It is a pivot point. I think it's one of those things where it's like the book's not going to go back to being what it was. Harbinger is sort of fundamentally adjusted as a result, which has been a blast and a real responsibility to take.
It was almost necessary for the character too, I think
so.
When you talked about
I think so. But, we also got to bring in Faith. For those of you who are wondering, like, should I read this? I don't know if I've ever really been a Harbinger fan. We got to bring in Faith, who, if you got onto the Valiant Universe in Faith, which I know a lot of people did, this is the follow-up to that. We're coming right off of Jody Hauser's arc. Jody's a close friend of ours, so we consulted with her. She has been helped, get behind what we're doing. You'll see some specific references in issue 6 to her run. That's just been a real joy to get to do as well, because what a character, and certainly one who has a lot to say about heroism and privilege. So that was really fun.
Right.
Yeah. Faith is just such a fun character.
Oh, she's great, man. She's great.
So let's move over to DC then, and let's start with arguably so to put this to both of you, you're currently touching 3 of my favorite characters of all time with the next 2 we're going to talk about. So let's start with Batman Beyond. You got to do the Batman Urban Legends, and
you got to kill Bruce Wayne.
You got to kill Bruce Wayne, and now we're going into the main series, which everybody listening, that book is on shelves right now as you're listening to it, so go buy it.
Came out today.
Yes, came out today. Yeah. So what's up with Batman Beyond besides killing Bruce?
What is so? As you said, Urban Legends #7. We got to kick off this story. They asked us to come in with 30 pages. We did, but we also came in with where those 30 pages took us. Because the 30 pages were a kickoff. They were an investigation of what happens the night of Bruce Wayne's murder, who did it, how it was done, and why. I'm going to spoil that story. So if you haven't read Urban Legend 7 and you just want to hit this all, like, you're like, oh, there's new Batman Beyond, just go read it now. Or, whatever. You're about to get spoiled.
Is that story in Neo Year #1?
No.
Or do you have to get Urban Legends?
No, you have to go back and get Urban Legends #7 if you want that story. We are going to recap that story in issue 1. Like, page 1 of issue 1 of Neo Year is going to tell you the plot of Urban Legends #7. So if you didn't read it, don't worry about it. We're going to get you up to speed. But I really do think of it as the 0 issue for this run. And when the trade's collected, it'll certainly be in the trade. So I would recommend that people go back, grab it on Comixology, grab a physical copy if you can find it, and read it as soon as you can. Or I guess Kindle, because Comixology doesn't exist anymore. Thanks, Amazon.
Yeah, don't even give me.
I know, man. Don't. I'm so mad.
I got my pitchfork. Hold on.
Yeah. But so suffice to say, spoiler alert. In issue 7 of Urban Legends, we have this 30-page story. It is about Terry McGinnis on the night of Bruce Wayne's murder. Bruce's pacemaker explodes. Someone has hacked into his pacemaker and blown up Bruce Wayne's heart. And Bruce tasks Terry with keeping on the Batman legend, but having to go beyond what being Batman means. And Terry doesn't entirely understand what that means. The night of Bruce is dying, he's kind of losing consciousness. He's not making a lot of sense. But Terry resolves that he's going to do this. And what Terry learns over the course of the night, that night investigating Bruce's murder, is that the thing that did it, the person who killed Bruce Wayne, is the gestalt consciousness of all of Gotham City. That Gotham City's all of its various AI constructs, because it's Neo Gotham, it's the future, everything's automated, have all networked together through the Bat computer, which tracks everything in Neo Gotham, and has
been tracking it for years,
and has become alive. And once it became alive, it was able to look at Gotham City and said, well, Batman hasn't really actually stopped crime in Gotham City. I can stop crime in Gotham City, but I can't have Batman running around doing it while I do it. So the first thing I'm going to do is kill Bruce Wayne, because I know Bruce Wayne is Batman. So done. And Gotham gets, like, effectively the thing that Bruce has spent his whole life protecting betrays him at his last moment, and then turns its eyes on Terry and turns its eyes on the legacy of Batman. Terry blows up the Batcave at the end of that issue, leaving Gotham, leaving the Bat computer, completely destroyed, but effectively making the living Gotham take over the rest of Gotham City. And now Terry is out there alone, with no Bruce, with no Ace, with no Batcave, with no gadgets, with limited supplies on the Batsuit, and a city that knows who he is and wants to kill him. He is out there having to follow up that promise to Batman, that promise to Bruce, to keep Batman alive. And that's where Neo Year #1 kicks off. The idea behind Neo Year, which is a 6-issue, Batman Beyond Neo Year, which is a 6-issue run, is to give Terry McGinnis his own year 1, to give him his own time to become Batman under his own power, under his own duress, without Bruce in his ear. Terry has been a Batman apprentice for the entire existence of Batman Beyond. We want him to become Batman in his own right and understand what that means for him. And that's going to involve a lot of pain and a lot of hurt and a lot of darkness and a lot of survival and a lot of resilience. We liken it a lot to Frank Miller's Year 1. I liken it a lot now that I've seen the Batman to the Batman. I don't know how we ended up on such similar wavelengths, but we are very much talking about the same stuff as Matt Reeves and his team in our own way, obviously. But I loved that movie, and I was really surprised how much it was resonating with what we were trying to do with Neo Year. So that is our that's my hard sell on Neo Year. Like, it's a whole new Terry McGinnis story. It is a whole new Neo Gotham. We're bringing in new villains. We're bringing in new heroes. We're bringing in new allies. It is a brand new day for Terry, and it's going to be a hard one for him to get through.
Brand new day and an even darker night.
Nice. There you go. Chapter 2.
That's the process. Jack says all the awesome things, and then I'm like, catchphrase.
But I have a question. Yeah, and it's funny because when you were talking about, like, Gotham being alive, the one thing I thought about the Batman. The movie was the best representation of Gotham in a movie, and it almost is a character in itself. So you effectively have taken Gotham and said, okay, well, how would it feel about Batman trying to help and failing, failing consistently, but so how do you write the city as a character, essentially?
Yeah, well, so Jack and I actually have a long history of let's say call it cyber fiction from our
Okay.
time with Hacktivist, which was our very first book.
Yep.
We to make sure that that book was as authentic and true as possible. We went down a deep research rabbit hole, not only down into computer theory and AI theory, but also working with members of Anonymous, really kind of finding out how this kind of counterculture works, and that's what we
Okay.
really wanted to inject into the story. The thing that we quickly hit on with the Living Gotham is that it could not be just a monotone kind of Hal, right?
Yeah.
This needs to be a character, and so we really developed the voice of the Living Gotham in order to kind of create this living person who could clash against Terry. One of the things we realized when we first started working on Batman Beyond was, what's the heart of his villain's rogue gallery, right? Batman's rogue gallery,
Right.
Bruce's rogue gallery is different variations of his own psychosis. For Terry, his rogues gallery is really built around the abuse and manipulation of technology of the future, right? Almost every one of them is how can we corrupt and break down these fundamentally maybe decent ideas. And that's what we wanted to look at with Living Gotham, the idea that from a galaxy brain standpoint, what Batman's doing is non-important, right? To the Living Gotham, the point isn't to stop crime. Stopping crime is impossible. What you can do is even it out. What you can do is make the line flat.
Keep the line flat. Keep the line flat became the Living Gotham's entire framework. It became a phrase that we used a lot over the course of the book, because the idea is not to save everyone. The idea is to save the effective amount of people. If everyone, it's sort of like unemployment, right? People are always like, well, if you get to zero unemployment, what happens? It's like the system doesn't work anymore. It's like, well, I mean, that's true. And that should probably tell us something about employment, right? But it doesn't. It just tells us, oh, well, we should never get to zero unemployment. We maybe take the wrong lesson. Gotham looks at crime and goes, well, I can't get to zero crime. What I can do is get to a manageable amount of crime where, say, 3 people die in muggings every night, but all the other muggings are stopped. Well, cool. I get 3 sacrifices a night. That's what I need to keep the line flat. That's good. And that's where Batman needs to be, right? Batman needs to be the gum in that works, looking after the people that the society, that the city decides are not worth its time. That decides are worthwhile sacrifices or negligible sacrifices.
And that's the human part of Batman, right? Is the hope. Once again, that's why fucking Matt Reeves got it, man. Batman is not about punching and kicking. Batman is about inspiration and hope, because Batman will always fight, always push to save everyone. Even if he knows he can't, he will never stop. And that's the real difference. Living Gotham is happy to accept that this is as good as it gets. Bruce Wayne, Terry McGinnis, never will.
Awesome.
So you could almost say he's like an urban legend.
It's almost
full circle.
It's almost like you could.
Wow.
We also gave ourselves a little bit of a fun twist on it, which people will see when they pick up issue 1. So I'm not going to spoil it here. But finding a way to externalize the Living Gotham, so it's not just a voice in Terry's ear, because as we establish in Urban Legends, it has access to the bat cowl. So the idea is like it can just whisper in his ear the way that Batman used to, which I just love as a general storytelling move, because it takes the Batman Beyond framework and flips it on its head. Suddenly, you don't have a comforting voice in your ear. You have your Joker effectively in your ear, which is just a very different thing for Batman to have to solve. But we also needed a way to externalize that. So looking at the kinds of villains that the Living Gotham can manufacture for Batman to run up against in a physical meat space kind of way. That felt very important. So you're going to meet one of them in issue 1. You're going to meet one of them in issue, or you're going to meet a couple of them in issue 1. You're going to meet another one in issue 2. Like, we're introducing a whole new rogues gallery for Terry.
Awesome.
And that led us to, just to Galaxy burn out for a hot second, that led us to, I think, the biggest adjustment that we're making to Terry, and why I think this, I sort of call Neo Year a brand new day. It's not just like marketing language. We're trying a different thing, right? We're blowing up a lot of the Batman Beyond framework, which I understand, like, some fans will be like, where's my classic Batman Beyond? It's like, I understand we're doing something different. Part of what attracted us to this as Batman Beyond fans is that I don't know where else to go with the old framework. I think the old framework was great, but I think they kind of ran it through. I think that was all you could do.
The show's fucking perfect.
The show's great.
The show's fucking perfect.
The show's
and then
perfect,
you hit Return of the Joker, and it's like, this is
brilliant.
A perfect collection.
There's no real reason for us to try to like continue a cover version of that. The important thing for us is like, if we're going to do this, we need to play a new song. So the biggest, and this was a conversation, you want to talk about our process, like this was a big conversation between Collin and I, which was, what does a new framework for Terry's villains look like? Because to be totally honest, Terry's framework of villains is Spider-Man's framework of villains. It's people who have technological responsibility who then go crazy over that technology. It's the same, like the framework for Green Goblin is the same framework as Blight. The framework for Ink is very similar to the framework for Black Cat or Dr. Octopus. Like you end up with very similar frameworks between Spider-Man and Batman Beyond. And so we thought, all right, if we're going to create a new ascension of him into a new level of Batman, then we need to really look at like what Terry's psychology is dealing with and put him up against villains who challenge that. So I think you're going to see villains whose entire framework is designed less around the perversion of technology and more around the acceptance or lack of acceptance of responsibility and legacy. Because that's what Terry's going through. Terry is going through a story about how we use the legacies that have been left for us by the past and how we carry them into the future. And his villains and his allies are all going to be living with their own legacies or building their own legacies and trying to understand how to inherit those or push them forward or how to destroy them. We're going to try to redirect the sort of theme conversation of Batman Beyond around what Terry's going through now in this year. And see how that goes. So that's maybe our biggest swing that we're taking, but I think is going to be a really fun one.
Okay.
And we'd be really remiss if we didn't, at this point, hype up Max Dunbar's amazing fucking art.
Yes.
We had no idea what this book was going to be until his art started rolling in. And I mean, I think anyone who takes a look at those pages just gets their mind pretty blown. Max is doing the work of his career. We are so fucking happy to have him on this team. He is this team.
Yeah.
And he's absolutely blowing it away with every single issue. Like getting Batman, obviously being a comics writer, getting your art in is always one of the best things. But I mean, it's fucking Batman, baby.
Yeah,
And Max is just absolutely bringing the thunder. It's so fucking cool.
Yeah, I love his stuff with like Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah. He's like a fantasy. Yeah. He's such a sort of famous fantasy artist. So when we started talking about him for the book, we were like, well, yeah, but like, how's it going to be when we like apply that to a cyberpunk aesthetic? And it turns out really good, really fucking seamless. Yeah, it turns out he knew exactly what to do.
Well,
Awesome.
we had one note from him early. It was like, well, Gotham. Think about Neo Gotham from the show, and it's sky like a bruise. Buildings that are just fucking monoliths. No windows, just giant stone fucking slabs, canyons, and mountains. And I think for the first time, he's created a Neo Gotham that feels, it feels epic. It feels huge. It feels bigger than Batman can possibly protect. Okay. Which is awesome because Terry McGinnis has no options. And he has to protect all of them.
And it's his villain. So that
hates him.
That's
awesome.
That's the meat.
That's awesome.
Wow. So let's go real quick on the next one because I really want to get into Captain America. Totally. But let's talk about Aquaman, Flash, Void Song. That's the 3-issue series you got coming up in a few months. Yep. What can we expect from that, real quick?
Aquaman, Flash, Void Song is, in a lot of ways, the opposite. What we wanted to do with it is effectively tell a Silver Age pulp guitar riff of a book. It is fast. It is fun. It has a lot of heart. But we didn't really want to dive into, we're not exploring the trauma of Barry Allen. We're not really, there's not a lot of brooding going on. There is brooding,
Good.
there is trauma, 100%.
Right.
But the point is, you want to see these two guys kicking ass.
Yeah.
You've never really seen this particular team up before. And that
Right.
was the big question. Obviously, you got 2 movies coming out. They were like, we would really love a story that features these 2 guys.
Yeah, let's not try to hide the origin, right? Yeah, like
Yeah,
DC has 2
right.
movies. They're like, hey, it's these 2 guys should star in a comic. That would be great. Is there a
Right.
way for the 2
Yeah,
of them? And that was the challenge that was brought to us.
Okay.
Almost like it's a business.
Almost like it's a business.
Yeah.
But, we don't take jobs unless we can tell a story that absolutely rips. So after a bit of bashing our heads against the wall, because honestly, why do Flash and Aquaman team up?
Right. How does it happen?
Make
Yeah.
a lot of sense.
Yeah.
We landed on the Void Song as a villain and their very unique kind of turn and what they actually want to do here on Earth. And once we landed on that kind of combination that unites these 2 men, we really realized we had a story cooking because they are very different. Obviously, they come at the superheroing perspective from very different angles. But the thing that does unite them, oddly enough, is their wives. They both love their wives so much. They're wife guys.
Yep, they are
100%.
2 big time wife guys.
Yep. Yeah.
And
Okay.
once you put them in danger, more than anything else, that can unite them. So we really want to do, yes, the entire planet is in danger. Yes, this is a giant Independence Day. I'm not going to say it's a crisis, but I mean, like, it's kind of along those lines.
Yep.
But the thing that really matters is Iris and Mira. And once you put their lives on the line, these guys have no choice but to unite. But once again, they have very different operating MOs. They have very different perspectives. So much like Jack and I, you can kind of get along, but then when you get deeper, you're like, what the fuck is this guy's deal?
Right.
But it is only through that clash, that yelling at each other over the table, that you can find the united goal. Realize that you both want to get to the same place, and then unite and go kick the ass of aliens, as
Nice.
Jack and I often do.
One of the fun things about working in a partnership is that I think we have a little bit more, and I think it's also probably a downside in terms of like getting an audience initially, is that we are very flexible in terms of tone. You're not just going to find a story that's like, I know writers who, when you read them, like I think a really good example of this is like Ram V, right? Ram's a friend of ours. When you read a Ram book, you know a Ram book. Ram writes like Ram all the time, and he sort of has one mode, and that mode is Ram. It's great. It's awesome. And you go to it for exactly that. We don't have that. We have several versions of us that you can find. You'll find, and we sort of talk about them internally. You sort of have the hacktivist version of us. You have the Zojicon version of us. You have the Joyride version of us. And those present really differently. And they pop in at different places. Like the Batman Beyond version of us, that's sort of the hacktivist version that's playing over there. Like on Aquaman Void Song, you're really getting, or Aquaman Flash Void Song, you're really getting the like Joyride version of us mixed in with all we've learned about writing superheroes and epics since we did that book way back. Like, it is fun, it's poppy, it's 4-color. The art is by Vasco Georgiev, who, if you have not seen his work yet, is just like, his stuff couldn't be more inviting and optimistic and exciting and glossy.
A lot of heart.
There's so much heart in it, but there's also just so much adventure and pulp. We brought him onto it. Like, once we figured this out, we were like, there's two ways we can go with this. There's the version where you bring in like a Brian Hitch, where the whole thing feels very like authority and feels like very, it's an alien invasion story, so it can get very like dark and intense, like very early. Or there's the version where you're really playing this fun and not like necessarily light, but fun and big and adventurous. And that felt more exciting to us right now. We were really playing very dark in Batman Beyond, and we're playing pretty dark in Captain America. And so this was really a chance for us to play a little lighter and to play a lot more fun and just really exercise a different muscle of what we do. So that's sort of how Void Song came about. And then, as Collin points out, it's really deeply personal because it is at its heart about 2 guys who don't really get along, who do the same thing and do it very well, learning to get along and become a team. It's a story about how these two men become or don't become friends in the midst of a giant crisis that can only rely on the two of them, where every other toy in the DC universe is off the board. It's just these two guys and a fleet of aliens. How do they manage it? What does that look like? The mandate was not, let's make the audience, soul search themselves super hard. The mandate here was, let's bring the audience on an incredibly fun ride that if they've never read a comic before, if they've just seen The Flash or just read Aquaman or just seen Aquaman, that they can walk into this, they can walk to the comic store for the very first time, get a graphic novel, because it's presenting as 3 issues, but ultimately it is a graphic novel. Like, these are 48-page issues that are each a chapter of one big book. They can walk in, they can get this big book, and they can get their first big comic book adventure. It doesn't take place in the movie universe. It takes place in the DC universe, but not in any kind of continuity where we're like worried about interconnectivity. It is a standalone adventure story with these two men. It is weirdly personal for us because of who we are and how our friendship operates.
Amazing.
So we hit Batman Beyond. We hit Aquaman.
Yum, yum.
Let's talk about the big one. So you guys are a part of the team that's relaunching Captain America in 2 different books. You're taking over Steve Rogers.
Yep.
Holy
And you're going to be
shit, we are? Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's the one we got?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
And you're doing this issue 0, and then it's leading into the 2 different books where Steve and Sam both have their own mantle and everything. So as a huge Captain America fan and someone who's been somewhat disappointed with the recent launches, why should I be excited about Captain America Sentinel of Liberty?
All right. So, where to even start? I'm gonna start at the easiest place, I think, which is Carmen Carnero is fucking killing it. I don't even care if you like our story. Carmen's art is so good that you could read it with no context and just be like, this is some of the best Captain America art ever produced. It is truly spectacular work. She understands Steve Rogers as a character better than any artist I have ever seen. I think she just nails the man behind the mask so well. You could just get it for the art, if for no other reason. That's how good the art is. Now,
and I think that's there's a sub-column there, which is, I guess one of the other elements here is, before we even get to the big stuff, the key really is, I think you hit it on the head. There's a Sam book and there's a Steve book. Yeah, they are both Captain America, but it was incredibly important to us, to Alana, to Tom, to Carmen, to tell a story that wasn't just about the suit, but was about Steve. Every one of our issues, we try and have it, we try for at least 50% to be about Steve himself. We want to see the man. We want to we want to meet his new friends. We want to see the human being who carries this shield, and the quiet moments. We, as you'll pick up in issue 1, what we have almost immediately is he's moving home. Right, we want to take him back to the streets, to Manhattan, to where he grew up, to try and reconnect to the man that he used to be. He is an artist. He's a tender soul, right? He just has to step up to protect not only America, but in a lot of cases, the world. But we did not want to lose that fundamental humanity that is behind the man. And that was that was one of the most important things to us and to Carmen, was making sure that we do not forget that Steve Rogers is one of the best men who's ever lived.
It does not matter if he's in the suit or if he's holding the shield. That this is a Steve Rogers book. Now, that said, why get excited about a new Captain America launch after years of great Captain America, but a lot of, frankly, playing the same song, playing Red Skull, playing Crossbones, playing the road trip across America as we learn the devastating realities of American injustice. These are all good stories, and stories that need to be told, and stories that have now been told with Steve several times over. When we were asked to come onto this, I've been very straightforward about this, like on the longest of shots, right? We had done Kang the Conqueror, and we'd surprised the people at Marvel with, I think, how we had done that and how we could get audiences in on it. And so they brought us in to say, hey, do you want to take a shot at Cap? You won't get it, but at least we can see what you will bring to the table, right? And we came in with an idea that we have had for years, which effectively boils down to, and they've said this enough in the marketing materials that I feel like I'm comfortable saying this, which effectively boils down to the shield, the symbol on that shield, those 3 rings and that star in the center are not what you think. They mean something else. They are a map. They are a code. They are a symbol. And they are the tip of a story iceberg that if Steve discovers it, that when Steve discovers it, is going to not just change his understanding of the Captain America mantle, but is going to open up an entire new universe of villains, of heroes, of allies. You're going to hear a lot of the same framework that we talk about when we talk about Batman Beyond, because for us, it's not worthwhile unless we're playing a new tune. So we're coming into Captain America hoping to carve out an entire new story area for him. I promise you, we are not playing the hits here. We are coming in and we are doing a new thing with this character that's going to take some real risks, that's going to push him into some places that are going to be uncomfortable, that are going to push him into some places that are going to open up some big secrets in terms of the Marvel Universe. And the story is going to be one that looks up and one that looks big, not one that looks down and gets small. So rather than doing a story about getting Steve on a motorcycle going and solving like small town America problems, which is I think what his mode has been for a very long time now, we are going to have Steve looking up into the larger systems that run our world and realizing the deep injustice that is ingrained there. And not the injustice of like some baddie at the UN doing something mean to someone. I'm talking about worldwide global supervillain conspiracy stuff. We're taking Cap back into the mad science world. We're taking Cap back into a world of not just the injustice that we see every day, but the larger scale systemic injustice that keeps us all in boxes. We want Steve Rogers to be looking at universal injustice and finding ways to fight it directly head on, but to do that, really reckoning with his own involvement in it and what that symbol on his shield means. So without spoiling anything, that's where it's getting started and that's where it's kicking off. And then my sort of like my little additional punch to like make sure you get into this is the book is like a lot of our stories about brotherhood. So this isn't just going to be about Steve Rogers. This book is very much a two-hander with Bucky Barnes, and we are taking the Winter Soldier, who I also think has effectively been stuck in one story almost since his creation, and we are moving him into his next story. And we are doing so unapologetically. We are going to be changing some stuff with Bucky and Steve. We are going to be making some real course adjustments on these characters and throwing some big new obstacles in their way that are going to change their relationship and change the way that they operate inside the Marvel Universe. So these are not like, it might sound like I'm overselling it, but truthfully for these two characters, it's a pivotal book. It is a book that if, unless somehow our entire run disappears tomorrow, is going to have some real ramifications on the Marvel Universe on a longer term perspective. We're not telling a minor story. We are coming in with a full bore reconstruction of Steve and Bucky's relationship, and also Steve's relationship with his own legacy and the mantle itself.
Awesome.
Just like obviously you mentioned the Zero issue, which is just we actually wrote as almost like a jazz session with Toshi. We passing pages back and forth, making sure it's these two, it's Sam and Cap coming at the same problem from literally two different angles.
All of Steve's stuff written by us, all of Sam's stuff written by Tochi, and sometimes sharing page space. So we were literally working around each other.
Cool.
It was rad.
That's really cool.
Some classic Arnim Zola in there, just being the most Zola he can possibly Zola. And it's a beautiful rad issue about these two men. But if you want the other prequel story, because why not? We have a single issue of Devil's Reign, of Chip's run event Devil's Reign, Winter Soldier, where Bucky has found himself pushing into Fisk's mansion looking for some of these documents because he knows there's secrets in his own past that he still has not cracked. He hasn't slept in weeks. He is starting to become disassociative to reality itself because he doesn't know who he is truly, because he knows it goes deeper. And that is what he's digging on. And so if you're going to pick up that story and you see the kind of trauma that Bucky is dealing with, that is the guy we are going to meet in our Captain America run. And while he meets Steve and he seems like that good old Bucky, we all know that when he goes home,
he's going through some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I can confirm to everybody out there, good issue. So I know we're close on time. I just got to get two quick questions about Captain America, and then we'll do our closing. One of the things that's been bugging me about Cap in recent Cap runs, are we past Secret Empire? Like, have we
Yes.
put that in the past? Okay.
Yep.
I can tell you fundamentally, we never mention it.
Okay.
Like I genuinely do not think we have mentioned Secret Empire once. I think he is. In fact, that was a big part of our. Like maybe once, a big part of
once we mentioned it as like a hat tip because it happened. We know it happened, and we know that it was one of those fundamental things that like tarnished the Captain America legacy in a big way.
Yes.
Steve knows it too,
but I think a big part of what the last few books have been saddled with, frankly, like the entire Coates run and Cantwell's run as well, were designed very much around reinterrogating what Steve meant and getting him back to a place where he could reliably, comfortably, and confidently be Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you fundamentally, Steve is not going to be like looking at himself in the mirror being like, do I deserve this? Am I really an evil Hydra agent? None of that is happening with us anymore. He is through that part of his process. Steve has gotten clear on Secret Empire.
I had hoped. I loved Secret Empire. I thought it was a great event. And I liked what Wade did afterwards. I felt like we kept going back to that well too much. But
yeah, it's
second question, the more important question for you.
Yeah.
Will I see MODOK in this book?
So let me tell you.
Redacted.
Redacted. Can I tell you that I don't know yet, and we'll leave it at that?
Okay. Solid.
We think MODOK fucking rips.
Yeah, I'll tell you that MODOK is not out of the conversation and is something we are very interested in because we have a take. But our focus early on with these characters is just like with Beyond is new shit. You're going to be seeing new villains. You're going to be seeing new stuff. So early on, not a lot of hits getting played. But looking at like Arnim Zola is the only guy we're bringing in early that's like, oh, that's like a Cap villain I recognize. Soon, though, I certainly
listen. You want to do Elvis MODOK too? I'm cool with that too. I love Elvis MODOK. I just love me some MODOK.
He'll take what he can get, honestly.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll send this to Tom. Be like, look, you want MODOK?
Yeah.
So before we cut you off, Mike and I have to do our quick pitch because you're DC writers.
Yeah.
So we got to pitch to you the greatest DC villain of all time that's never used.
We've done it.
Hey.
Yeah, Codpiece.
I think Jackson, we did this with you. Colin, are you aware of the character Codpiece?
Codpiece.
God, no.
I don't think you did this for me either. What is Codpiece?
Oh.
It's the issue right after the Grant Morrison run of Doom Patrol.
Doom Patrol number 70. Greatest single issue of a comic ever written.
Yep, and Codpiece. I don't know if he's on the cover, but he shows up, and he is a villain with a mechanical codpiece that shoots various different gadgets out of it. Yeah.
Wait, it shoots gadgets out of his
yeah.
codpiece?
So yeah, there's like
it can be used as a cannon. At one point, it's used as a drill.
Yep.
It's very you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
It's like Inspector Gadget, but the hat is on the crotch. You know what I mean? Like different things pop out. I guess like almost like a utility.
And here I was hoping that it was going to be a man with a cod head.
Oh, no.
Like a gangster. He's like a character for like the street level villains. All right.
I thought it was gonna be like a cod on his junk.
Oh no! Yeah.
Listen,
Well,
I know
so-
you guys are going to go into a writing session after
Shit.
this. I just wanted to inspire just a little bit.
All right, so
Looking forward to that.
so now it's Aquaman Flash Codpiece. Sorry, Void
Yeah.
Song, you're out. New
and
villain.
we
Son
may
of Codpiece. Son of Codpiece.
Oh yeah, there we
Son
go.
of Codpiece.
There we go.
Oh my god. Sold.
Oh no, man.
Yeah, he
Terrible.
finds the Codpiece and he's like, fuck, I can't wear this thing, but maybe if
Yeah.
I like turn it into a hat,
Look,
no one will know.
Doom Patrol continues to be the source of the greatest one-panel gags in DC Comics history.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It's just an excellent book.
amazing.
I think I stopped at the Morrison run, so I don't think I ever read this
Yeah.
issue.
So people don't know,
Right.
Because it's like,
Yeah.
immediate issue after.
All
Oh my
right,
god.
all right,
Yeah.
all right.
Amazing.
Codpiece
And with
it
that,
is.
we got-
It's written by Rachel Pollack, who's an amazing writer on her own too.
Yeah,
so,
I've heard that Rachel Pollack's
Yeah.
run is amazing. I haven't read it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And she may or may not be on the show very soon. to
Amazing.
talk
Yeah,
about,
they're
but-
collecting it, right?
Yeah.
I thought I saw they're like doing a
Yeah.
I
collection of
believe
it. Yeah,
so.
I'm excited
Mhm.
to read it.
Mhm.
God, and maybe we'll get live action Codpiece.
There you
God,
go.
I know. We
Listen,
tweeted
these
James
are
Gunn
the
so
things
many
I
times.
dream at night about.
Yeah.
This is what I dream about.
Yeah.
Well, my
Awesome.
our buddy
Yeah.
Matt Zook plays Negative Man on the show, so I'll just text him and be like, "Hey, tell the writers about Codpiece." I'll do that for you.
Yes. Oh my god.
This is Jackson. Both of you, you're welcome back anytime.
Yeah. Jackson, Collin.
This could be the Chris,
hang
Mike,
out.
Jackson, and Collin show now because
You
that's
guys don't have time for it, but we'll pretend.
Yeah, you're good. You have to fight Dan over at Gate Crashers, who keeps being like, "You're technically just
Yeah.
hosts now." It's like, no.
Yeah. No, we're not.
So, guys, thank you so much for being on. We've taken enough of your time, and we greatly appreciate it. We have to do this again in the future once your next slate of books are announced. So,
Hell yeah, man. Yeah, let's
so
let's
much.
do it. Let's do it in the fall or winter once you've read Captain America and you can tell us how much you hate it. Be great.
Oh yeah, and he will. Too.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Yes. You guys gotta
Awesome.
protect us because we're gonna take some swings, and that might piss some people
Yeah,
off.
I'm getting
yeah.
Captain America: Sentinel of Liberty 5. I'm getting off the internet. I'm just gonna warn you now.
Yeah,
I'm
everything's-
calling my shot now.
Yep.
that's okay. I got your direct email now, so
Yeah.
don't worry. I can get to you. All right, guys. Thanks again, everybody out there. Make sure to check the show notes down below for these guys' social and everything. And actually, do you want to pimp all that out before we take off?
At Jackson Lanzing on Twitter. Easy find.
Yep, at CP Kelly on Twitter. The P is a mystery.
Oh wow.
There you go.
Find out next
Find out
episode.
next time.
But no, thank you
Yes.
so much. This was a total blast. We appreciate the timeline because, as we mentioned earlier, we got some fucking deadlines.
Fucking deadlines.